8:17 p.m., 8/19, 2024. We are going to finish this play, The 10th Man by Paddy Chayefsky, if I can flip to the right page. And see if the girl, Evelyn, will be exorcised, if she was faking it, if Arthur runs away with her, if the four old Jewish men see a demon. We don't know what's going to happen. Shomer Shabbos. Jewish as fucking Tevye. Let's dive in. Act 3 of The 10th Man by Paddy Chayefsky, The Exorcism. Half an hour later. At Rise, the girl is sitting in the rabbi's office, perched on the couch, nervous, frightened, staring down at her restlessly twisting fingers. Foreman sits behind the rabbi's desk, wrapped in his own troubled thoughts. He wears over his suit a long white prayer shawl with thick black stripes, like that worn by the Kabbalist throughout the play. Indeed, all the men now wear these ankle-length white prayer shawls except Arthur, who at Rise is also in the rabbi's office, deep in thought. The Kabbalist stands downstage left, his prayer shawl hooded over his head. He is leafing through a volume, preparing the prayers for the exorcism. The sexton is standing by the wall phone, the receiver cradled to his ear, waiting for an answer to a call he has just put in. He is more or less surrounded by Alper, Schlissel, and Zatorsky. How about Milsky the butcher? Alper. Milsky wouldn't come. Ever since they gave the seat by the east wall to Kornblum, Milsky said he wouldn't set foot in this synagogue again. Every synagogue I have belonged to, there have always been two kosher butchers who get into a fight over who gets the favored seat by the east wall during the high holy days. And the one who doesn't abandons the congregation in a fury. The one who does always seems to die before the next high holy days. Schlissel. Kornblum the butcher died? I didn't know Kornblum died. Alper. Sure. Kornblum died 4 years ago. Schlissel. Well, he had lousy meat. Believe me, may his soul rest in peace. The sexton has hung up, recouped his dime, reinserted it, and is dialing again. Zatorsky to the sexton. No answer? The sexton shakes his head. The sexton. I'm calling Harris. Schlissel. Harris? You tell an 82-year-old man to come down and make a 10th for an exorcism, and he'll have a heart attack talking on the phone with you. Sexton, dialing. Well, what else am I to do? It is hard enough to assemble 10 Jews under the best of circumstances, but in the middle of the afternoon on a Thursday, it is an absolute nightmare. Aronowitz is in Miami. Klein the furrier is at his job in Manhattan. It is a work day today. Who shall I call? He waits for someone to answer. There are many things that I have to do. The tapestries on the ark, as you see, are faded and need needlework, and the candelabras and silver goblet for the saying of the Sabbath benediction are tarnished and dull. But every second of my day seems to be taken up with an incessant search for 10 Jews. On the phone. Hello, Harris? Harris, this is Blyer the sexton. We need you badly down here in the synagogue for a quorum. If I told you why, you wouldn't come. All right, I'll tell you. But in God's name, don't tell another soul, not even your daughter-in-law. Schlissel. My daughter-in-law, may she grow like an onion with her head in the ground. The sexton on the phone. Hirschman is going to exorcise a Dybbuk from Foreman's granddaughter. I said Hirschman is a Dybbuk. That's right. A Dybbuk. Right here in Mineola. That's right. Why should Mineola be exempt from a Dybbuk? Why should Mineola be exempt from Dybbuks? Alper, thinking of names. There used to be a boy come down here every morning about 8, 9 years ago. A devout boy with forelocks and side curls. A pale boy who was studying to be a rabbi at the seminary. The sexton on the phone. Harris, this is not a joke. Schlissel. Chwatkin. Alper. That's right, Chwatkin. That was the boy's name. Chwatkin. Maybe we should call him. Does he still live in the community? Schlissel. He's a big television actor. He's on television all the time. Pinky Sims. He's an actor. Zatorsky. Pinky Sims? That's a name for a rabbinical student? The sexton. Put on your sweater and come down. Alper, to the sexton who has just hung up. So Harris is coming? The sexton. Yes, he's coming. So with Harris that makes 8, and I am frankly at the end of my resources. I don't know who else to call. Alper. This is terrible. Really. God manifests himself in our little synagogue, and we can't even find 10 Jews to say hello. The sexton. I shall have to go out in the street and get 2 strangers. Putting on his coat. Well, I don't look forward to this at all. I will have to stop people on the street, asking them if they are Jewish, which is bad enough, and then explain to them I wish them to attend the exorcism of a Dybbuk. I mean, surely you can see the futility of it. Alper, to the Kabbalist who is crossing now en route to the office. We can only get 8. A disgrace, really. We shall not have the exorcism for lack of 2 Jews. Sexton on his way out. All right, I'm going. He exits. Zatorsky to Schlissel. In those days when I was deceiving my wife, I used to tell her I was entertaining out-of-town buyers. I once told her I was entertaining out-of-town buyers every night for almost 3 weeks. It was a foolhardy thing to do because even my wife could tell business was not that good. So one night, she came down to my loft on 36th Street and walked in and caught me with, well, I'm sure I've told you this story before. Schlissel. Many times. The Kabbalist enters the office. Upon his entrance, the girl stands abruptly, obviously deeply disturbed and barely in control of herself. She turns from the Kabbalist and shades her eyes with her hand to hide her terror. Foreman looks up briefly. He seems to be in a state of shock. The Kabbalist sits down on the couch, letting his heavy prayer shawl fall back on his shoulders and studies his hands, folded patiently between his knees. After a moment, he speaks. The Kabbalist quietly. Dybbuk, I am Israel, son of Isaac. My father was Isaac, son of Asher, and I wear his fringed shawl on my shoulders as I talk to you. Upon these words, the girl suddenly contorts her form, as if seized by a violent cramp. She clutches her stomach and bends low, and soft sobs begin to come out of her. The Kabbalist. Reveal yourself to me. The girl. In the voice of the Dybbuk. I am Hannah Luchinsky. In the synagogue, Alper, Schlissel, and Zatorsky begin to edge, quite frightened, to the open office door. Arthur watches them from his seat behind the rabbi's desk. The Kabbalist. Why do you possess this girl's body? The girl. Twisting and contorting in the voice of the Dybbuk. My soul was lost at sea, and these is no one to say the prayers for the dead over me. Kabbalist. I will strike a bargain with you. Leave this girl's body through her smallest finger, doing her no damage, not even a scratch, and I shall sit on wood for you for the first 7 days of mourning, and shall plead for your soul for the first 30 days, and shall say the prayers for the dead over you 3 times a day for the 11 months, and light the memorial lamp each year upon the occasion of your death. I ask you to leave this girl's body. The girl laughs quietly. The girl in the voice of the Dybbuk. You give me short weight, for you will yourself be dead before the prayers for the new moon. In the office doorway, the three old men shudder. Foreman looks up slowly. The Kabbalist closes his eyes. The Kabbalist, quietly. How do you know this? The girl in the voice of the Dybbuk. Your soul will fly straight to the heavenly gates, and you will be embraced by the archangel Mihoil. Kabbalist. Then I enjoin the angel of death to speed his way. Dybbuk, I order you to leave the body of this girl. The girl's face suddenly flashes with malevolence. The girl in the voice of the Dybbuk shouting, No! I seek vengeance for these 40 years of limbo. I was betrayed in my youth and driven to the evil impulse against my will. I have suffered beyond belief, and my spirit has lived in dunghills and in piles of ashes. And I demand that the soul of David, son of Abram, be cast through Gilgal, for the space of 40 years times 10 to gasp for air in the sea in which I drowned. Foreman, standing in terror. No, no. The girl in the voice of the Dybbuk. So that my soul may have peace, a soul for a soul, that is my bargain. Foreman, shouting, Let it be then. Leave my granddaughter in peace, and I will give my soul in exchange. The Kabbalist, with ringing authority. The disposition of David, son of Abram's soul, will not be decided here. Its fall and descent has been ordained by the second universe of angels. The bargain cannot be struck. Dybbuk, hear me. I order you to leave the body of this girl through her smallest finger, causing her no pain nor damage. And I give you my word, prayers will be said over you in full measure. But if you adjure these words, then must I proceed against you with malediction and anathema. The girl laughs. Raise not thy mighty arm against me, for it has no fear for me. A soul for a soul, that is my bargain. The girl suddenly begins to sob. The Kabbalist to Alper. We shall have to prepare for the exorcism. Alper. I thought that would be the case. The girl, sitting down on the couch, frightened in her own voice. I am so afraid. Foreman. There is nothing to fear. It will all be over in a minute, like having a tooth pulled, and you will walk out of here a cheerful child. Schlissel. Ambling back into the synagogue proper with Zatorsky and Alper. I tell you, I'd feel a lot better if the Korpatschnicker was doing this. If you are going to have a tooth pulled, at least let it be by a qualified dentist. Zatorsky. I thought Hirschman handled himself very well with that Dybbuk. Schlissel to Alper and Zatorsky. If I tell you all something, promise you will never throw it back in my face? Zatorsky. What? Schlissel. I'm beginning to believe she is really possessed by a Dybbuk. Zatorsky. I'm beginning to get used to the whole thing. The Kabbalist has stood and moved upstage to the rear wall of the synagogue, where he stands in meditation. Foreman is sitting again, somewhat numb, beside his granddaughter. After a moment, the girl speaks. The girl. I am very frightened, Arthur. Arthur rises. Well, I spoke to my analyst, as you know, and he said he didn't think this exorcism was a bad idea at all. The point is, if you really do believe you are possessed by a Dybbuk, the girl. Oh, I do. Arthur. Well, then he feels exorcism might be a good form of shock treatment that will make you more responsive to psychiatric therapy and open the door to an eventual cure. Mr. Hirschman assures me it is a painless ceremony. So you really have nothing to be frightened of. The girl. Will you be here? Arthur. Of course. Did you think I wouldn't? Foreman moved slowly out into the synagogue as if to ask something of the Kabbalist. The girl. I always sense flight in you, Arthur. Really, the girl. You are always taking to your heels, Arthur, especially moments like now when you want to be tender. I know that you love me, or I couldn't be so happy with you. But the whole idea of love seems to terrify you, and you keep racing off to distant detachments. I feel that if I reached out for your cheek now, you would turn your head, or in some silent way clang the iron gates shut on me. You have some strange Dybbuk all of your own, some sad little turnkey, who drifts about inside of you, locking up all the little doors and saying, You are dead. You are dead. You do love me, Arthur. I know that. Arthur, gently. I wish you well, Evelyn. We can at least say that. The girl. I love you. I want so very much to be your wife. She stares at him, her face glowing with love. She says quietly, I will make you a good home, Arthur. You will be very happy with me. He regards her for a moment, caught by her wonder. He reaches forward and lightly touches her cheek. She cannot take her eyes from him. The girl. I adore you, Arthur. Arthur, with deep gentleness. You are quite mad. They look at each other. Arthur stands. The girl. You think our getting married is impractical? Arthur. Yes, I would say it was at the least impractical. The girl. Because I am insane and you are suicidal? Arthur. I do think those are two reasons to give one pause. The girl. Well, at least we begin with utility. Most marriages take years to arrive there. Arthur. Don't be saucy, Evelyn. The girl. Earnestly. Oh, Arthur. I wouldn't suggest marriage if I thought it was utterly unfeasible. I think we can make a go of it. I really do. I know you have no faith in my exorcism. Arthur. As I say, it may be an effective shock therapy. The girl. But we could get married this minute, and I still think we could make a go of it. I'm not a dangerous schizophrenic. I just hallucinate. I could keep your house for you. I did for my father very competently before he remarried. I'm a good cook, and you do find me attractive, don't you? I love you, Arthur. You are really very good for me. I retained reality remarkably well with you. I know I could be a good wife. Many schizophrenics function quite well if one has faith in them. Arthur, touched by her earnestness. My dear Evelyn, the girl. I don't ask you to have faith in Dybbuks or gods or exorcism. Just in me. He gently touches her cheek. Arthur, how in heaven's name did we reach this point of talking marriage? The girl. It is a common point of discussion between people in love. He kneels before her, takes her hand between his. Arthur, tenderly. I do not love you, nor do you love me. We met 5 hours ago and exchanged the elementary courtesy of conversation. The rest is your own ingenuousness. The girl. I do not remember ever being as happy as I am this moment. I feel enchanted. They are terribly close now. He leans to her, his arms moving to embrace her. And then he stops, and the moment is broken. He turns away, scowls, stands. The girl. You are in full flight again, aren't you, Arthur? I reserve a certain low level of morality which includes not taking advantage of incompetent minors. The girl. Why can't you believe that I love you? Arthur. I simply do not believe anybody loves anyone. Let's have an end to this. He is abruptly aware that their entire love scene has been observed by the old men, who are clustered together in the open doorway of the rabbi's office, beaming at them. With a furious sigh, Arthur strides to the door and shuts it in the old men's faces. He turns back to the girl, scowling. Really, this is all much too fanciful. Really it is. In an hour you will be back to your institution where I may or may not visit you. The girl sits down slowly. The girl. If I were not already insane, the thought that I might not see you again would make me so. Arthur. I don't know what you want of me. The girl. One step from tears. I want you to find the meaning of your life in me. Arthur. But that's insane. How can you ask such an impossible thing? The girl. Because you love me. Arthur cries out. I don't know what you mean by love. All it means to me is I shall buy you a dinner, take you to the theater, and then straight to our tryst, where I shall reach under your blouse for the sake of tradition while you breathe hotly in my ear in a pretense of passion. We will mutter automatic endearments, nibbling at the sweat on each other's earlobes, all the while gracelessly fumbling with buttons and zippers, cursing under our breath the knots in our shoelaces, and telling ourselves that this whole comical business of zipping off our trousers is an act of nature like the pollination of weeds. Even in that one brief moment when our senses finally obliterate our individual alonenesses, we will hear ringing in our ears the reluctant creaking of mattress springs. The girl stares at him, awed by this bitter expostulation. The girl. You are possessed. Arthur. At your age, I suppose one still finds theatrical charm in this ultimate of fantasies. But when you have been backstage as often as I have, you will discover love to be an altogether shabby business of cold creams and costumes. The girl, staring at him. You are possessed by a Dybbuk that does not allow you to love. Arthur, crying out again in sudden anguish. Oh, leave me alone. Let's get on with this wretched exorcism. He strides to the door, suddenly turns, confused, disturbed, and would say something, but he doesn't know what. He opens the door to find the old men patiently waiting for him with beaming smiles. This disconcerts him, and he looks at the girl again and is again at a loss for words. She stares at the floor. The girl. We could be very happy if you would have faith in me. He turns and shuffles out of the rabbi's office. Arthur to the old men. It was tasteless of you to gawk at us. He continues into the synagogue, trailed by the old men. He sits and is immediately surrounded by the old men. Foreman. Are you interested in this girl, young man? Because my son is not a rich man by any means, but he will give you a fine wedding catered by good people with a cantor, Zatorsky, and a choir. Foreman. Possibly, and a dowry perhaps in the amount of $500, which, believe me, is more than he can afford. However, I am told you are a professional man, a lawyer, and the father of the bride must lay out good money for such a catch. Alper and Zatorsky. Sure, absolutely. Foreman. Of course, the girl is an incompetent, and you will have to apply to the court to be appointed the committee of her person. Alper. A formality, I assure you, once you have married her. Foreman. As for the girl, I can tell you firsthand, she is a fine Jewish girl. Zatorsky. Modest. Alper. Devout. Foreman. And She bakes first-rate pastries. Arthur, staring at the gay old men with disbelief. You are all mad. Madder than the girl. And if I don't get out of here soon, I shall be as mad as the rest. Zatorsky, a beauty, young man. Listen, it is said, better a full-bosomed wife than to marry a Rothschild. Schlissel, leave the man alone. We have all been miserably married for half a century ourselves. How can you in good faith recommend the institution? Alper, the girl is so obviously taken with him. It would be a good match. Foreman, anxiously, perhaps he is married already. Alper, to Arthur, my dear fellow, how wonderful to be in love. Arthur, I love nothing. The Kabbalist, yes, the girl is quite right. He is possessed. He loves nothing. Love is an act of faith, and yours is a faithless generation. This is your Dybbuk. The front door of the synagogue opens, and the sexton slips quietly in, closing the door. Arthur, to the Kabbalist, don't you think it's time to get on with this exorcism? The Kabbalist, yes. He moves to the door of the rabbi's office, where he regards the supine form of the girl on the couch. Alper, to the sexton, did you get anybody? The sexton moves in his nervous way down into the synagogue. He has obviously been on the go since he left. Sweat beads his brow, and he is breathing heavily. The sexton, unbuttoning his coat and wiping his brow. Gentlemen, we are in the soup. Schlissel, you couldn't find anybody? The sexton, actually, we have 9 now, but the issue of a quorum has become an academic one. Let me catch my breath. The rabbi will be here in a few minutes. Alper, the rabbi? The sexton, I saw him on Woodhaven Boulevard, and he said he would join us. Harris is on his way already. I saw him coming down the hill from his house. But the whole matter is academic. Alper, you told the rabbi we need him to exorcise the girl's Dybbuk? The sexton, well, what else was I to say? He asked me what I needed a quorum for at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I told him. And he thought for a moment, and he said, all right, I'll be there in a few minutes. He is quite a nice fellow, something of a press agent perhaps, but with good intentions. Oh, I am perspiring like an animal. I shall surely have the og tomorrow. I have been running all over looking for Jews. I even went to Friedman the tailor. He wasn't even in town. So let me tell you, I was running back here. I turn the corner on 33rd Road there, and I see parked right in front of the synagogue a police patrol car. The others start. Alper, looking up. Oh? The sexton. That's what I mean when I say we are in the soup. Schlissel. Did they say something to you? The sexton. Sure they said something. I tell you, my heart gave such a turn when I saw that police car there. They were sitting there, those 2 policemen. Big strapping Cossacks with dark faces like avenging angels, smoking cigarettes and with their revolvers bulging through their blue overcoats. As I walked across the street to the synagogue, my knees were knocking. Alper, when was this? It was just now? The sexton, just a second, just before I came in the door. Hello, Harris, how are you? This last to the octogenarian who, bundled in his heavy overcoat, muffler, and with his hat pulled down on his head, has just entered the synagogue. Zatorsky to the sexton. So what happened? Harris, in his high, shrill voice as he unbuttons his overcoat. Gentlemen, have you heard about this Dybbuk? Schlissel. Harris, we were all here at the time he called you. The sexton. Harris, did you see the police car outside? Schlissel. What did the policeman say? The sexton, unbuttoning his collar and wiping his neck with a handkerchief. This big strapping fellow with his uniform full of buttons looks up. He says, you know a man named David Foreman? We're looking for him and his granddaughter. A girl, 18 years old. Well, well, are we in the soup or not? Schlissel goes to the front door, opens it in a conspiratorial crack, and looks out. Arthur, I don't think the police will bother you if you get your exorcism started right away. They won't interrupt a religious ceremony, especially if they don't know what it is. The Kabbalist, who has made up his own mind. Sexton, fetch the black candles, one for each man. The sexton scurries to the rabbi's office where the black candles are lying on the desk, wrapped in brown grocery paper. Arthur, moving to the front door. I'll stand by the door and talk to the police if they come in. Schlissel, closing the front door. They're out there all right. The Kabbalist. He looks about the little synagogue, immensely dignified now, almost beatified in his authority. The others wait on his words. I shall want to perform the ablutions of the Kohanim. Is there a Levite among you? Schlissel. I am a Levite. The Kabbalist. You shall pour the water on my hands. The sexton scoots across the synagogue, carrying black candles to everyone. Harris, looking distractedly about. What are we doing now? Where's the Dybbuk? Alper. Harris, put on a prayer shawl. Harris, moving nervously to the office door. Is this actually a serious business, then? Where's the Dybbuk? Tell me, because Blyer the sexton told me nothing. His words drift off into a mumble. He enters the office, sees the girl sitting rigidly on the chair. He starts at the sight of her, snatches a prayer shawl from the carton, and, quite in terror, darts back into the synagogue. The Kabbalist. There is nothing in the Book of Codes which gives the procedure for exorcism, so I have selected those passages to read that I thought most apt. For the purpose of cleansing our souls, we shall recite the Al-Chait, and we shall recite that prayer of atonement which begins, Sons of man, such as sit in darkness. As you pray these prayers, let the image of God in any of his 72 faces rise before you. Albert, crossing into the rabbi's office. I'll get the books. The sexton, giving Schlissel a metal bowl and a pitcher. Fill it with water. Schlissel, I'm an atheist. Why am I mixed up in all this? Alper, we do not have a quorum. Will this be valid? The Kabbalist, we will let God decide. The sexton, when shall I blow the ram's horn? The Kabbalist, I shall instruct you when. Harris, putting on his shawl. What shall I do? Where shall I stand? Zatorsky to Harris, stand here and do not be afraid. Foreman comes out of the rabbi's office carrying a long white woolen prayer shawl, which he gives to Arthur. Foreman to Arthur, I will show you how to put it on. He helps Arthur enshroud himself in the prayer shawl. Schlissel comes out of the washroom carefully carrying his brass bowl and the pitcher filled with water. He goes to the Kabbalist, who holds his white hands over the basin. Schlissel carefully pours the water over them. The Kabbalist speaks with great distinctness. The Kabbalist. Blessed art thou, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who hath sanctified us by his commandments, and has commanded us to cleanse our hands. All. Amen. The others watch until the last of the water has been poured over his hands. A sudden silence settles over the synagogue. They are all standing about now, 8 men cloaked in white, holding their prayer books. The Kabbalist dries his hands on a towel handed to him by Schlissel. He puts the towel down, rolls his sleeves down, takes his long shawl, and, with a sweep of his arms, raises it over his head, lifts his face, and cries out, The Kabbalist. Thou knowest the secrets of eternity and the most hidden mysteries of all living. Thou searchest the innermost recesses, and triest the reins in the heart. Naught is concealed from thee or hidden from thine eyes. May it then be thy will, O Lord our God and God of our fathers, to forgive us for all our sins, to pardon us for all our iniquities, and to grant us remission for all our transgressions. As one, the other old men sweep their shawls over their heads and begin the ancient recital of their sins. They all face the ark, standing in their places, bending and twisting at the knees and beating upon their breasts with the clenched fists of their right hands. They all pray individually, lifting their voices in a wailing of the Spirit. Arthur remains silent. All. For the sin which we have committed before thee under compulsion or of our own, and for the sin which we have committed before thee in hardening of the heart, for the sin which we have committed before thee unknowingly, Zatorsky, and for the sin which we have committed before thee with utterance of the lips, Foreman, for the sin which we have committed before thee by unchastity, Schlüssel, for the sin which we have committed before thee by scoffing, Harris, for the sin which we have committed before thee by slander, and for the sin which we have committed before thee by the stretched forth neck of pride. It is a deadly serious business, this gaunt confessional. The spectacle of the 8 men cloaked in white, crying out into the air the long series of their sins, and their pleas for remission, has a suggestion of the fearsome barbarism of the early Hebrews. They stand, eyes closed, and in the fervor of communication with God, their faces pained with penitence. The last of the old men, Harris, finally cries out the last lines of supplication, his thin voice all alone in the hush of the synagogue. And also for the sins for which we are liable to any of the 4 death penalties inflicted by the court, stoning, burning, beheading, and strangling. For thou art the forgiver of Israel and the pardoner of the tribes of Jeshurun in every generation, and beside thee we have no king who pardoneth and forgiveth. Again the silence falls over the stage. The Kabbalist. Children of men, such as sit in darkness and in the shadow of death, being bound in affliction and iron, he brought them out of darkness and the shadow of death. The others. Children of men, such as sit in darkness and in the shadow of death, being bound in affliction and iron, he brought them out of darkness and the shadow of death. The Kabbalist. Fools because of their transgressions and because of their iniquities are afflicted. The others. Fools because of their transgressions and because of their iniquities are afflicted. The Kabbalist. They cry unto the Lord in their trouble, and he saveth them out of their distress. The repetition of the lines has its cumulative effect on Arthur. His lips begin to move involuntarily, and soon he has joined the others, quietly muttering the words, Arthur and the others. They cry unto the Lord in their trouble, and he saveth them out of their distress. The Kabbalist. Then he is gracious unto him and saith, Arthur and the others. Then he is gracious unto him and saith, the Kabbalist. Deliver him from going down to the pit, I have found a ransom. Arthur and the others. Deliver him from going down to the pit, I have found a ransom. The Kabbalist. Amen. Arthur and the others. Amen. The Kabbalist. Bring the girl in, Mr. Foreman. Foreman nods and goes into the rabbi's office. Alper to Schlüssel. I don't like it. Even if the rabbi comes, there will only be 9 of us. I am a traditionalist. Without a quorum of 10, it won't work. Schlüssel, muttering, So what do you want me to do? In the rabbi's office, Foreman touches the girl's shoulder, and she starts from her coma-like state and looks at him. Foreman, come, it is time. She nods nervously and sits up. There is a vacuous look about her, the vague, distracted look of the insane. The girl, quite numbly. Where are you taking me? My mother is in Rome. They put the torch to her 7 sons, and they hold her hostage. She rises in obedience to her grandfather's arm as he gently escorts her out of the office into the synagogue proper. All the while, she maintains a steady drone of rattling gibberish. Where were you yesterday? I asked everybody about you. You should have been here. We had a lot of fun. We had a party, and there were thousands of people, Calabites and Bedouins, dancing like gypsies. She suddenly lapses into a sullen silence, staring at the ground, her shoulders jerking involuntarily. The others regard her uneasily. The sexton. Shall I take the ram's horn out? The Kabbalist. Yes. The sexton produces the horn-shaped trumpet from the base of the pulpit. The front door of the synagogue now opens, and a tall, strapping young policeman, heavy with the authority of his thick blue overcoat, steps one step into the synagogue. He stands in the open doorway, one hand on the latch of the door, his attitude quite brusque, as if he could not possibly get his work done if he had to be polite. The policeman. Is Rabbi Marx here? Alper throws up his arms in despair. The others alternately stare woodenly at the policeman or down at the floor. Arthur, still deeply disturbed, rubs his brow. The Kabbalist begins to pray silently, only his lips moving in rapid supplication. The sexton. No, he's not. The policeman. I'm looking for a girl named Evelyn Foreman. Is that the girl? He indicates the girl. Alper, moving away, muttering. Is there any need, officer, to be so brusque or to stand in an open doorway so that we all chill to our bones? The policeman closing the door behind him. Sorry. Schlüssel to Zatorsky. A real Cossack, eh? What a brute. He will take us all to the station house and beat us with nightsticks. The policeman, a little more courteously. A girl named Evelyn Foreman. Her father has put out a call for her. She is missing from her home. He said she might be here with her grandfather. Is there a Mr. David Foreman here? Nobody says anything. Alper. You are interrupting a service, officer. The policeman. I'm sorry, just tell me, is that the girl? I'll call in and tell them we found her. Schlüssel suddenly advances on the policeman. Schlüssel. First of all, where do you come to walk in here like you were raiding a pool room? This is a synagogue, you animal. Have a little respect. The policeman. All right, I'm sorry. I happen to be Jewish myself. Alper looks up quickly. Alper. You're Jewish? Alper turns slowly to the sexton. Sexton, our 10th man. The sexton. Alper, are you crazy? Alper, a fine, strapping Jewish boy. To the policeman. Listen, we need a 10th. You'll help us out, won't you? Schlüssel, strolling nervously past Alper. Alper, what are you doing, for God's sakes? Alper, we have to have 10 men. Schlüssel, what kind of prank is this? You are an impossible rogue, do you know that? Alper, taking Schlüssel aside. What are you getting so excited about? He doesn't have to know what it is. We'll tell him it's a wedding. I think it's funny. Schlüssel, well, we'll see how funny it is when they take us to the basement of the police station and beat us with their nightsticks. Alper, nightsticks. Really, Schlüssel, you are a romantic. Advancing on the policeman. I tell you, officer, it would really help us out if you would stay 10 or 15 minutes. This girl, if you really want to know, is about to be married, and what is going on here is the ritual of shriving. Zatorsky. Shriving? Alper. A sort of ceremony of purification. It is a ritual not too commonly practiced anymore, and I suggest you will find it quite interesting. Harris. Schlüssel. What is he talking about? Schlüssel. Who knows? The policeman opens the door and calls to his colleague outside. The policeman. I'll be out in about 10 minutes, Tommy, all right? He opens the door wider for the rabbi, who now comes hurrying into the synagogue, still carrying his briefcase. Hello, Rabbi, how are you? The rabbi frowns, a little confused at the policeman's presence. The rabbi. Hello, officer. What are you doing here? He moves quickly to his office, taking stock of everything as he goes. The 7 old men, and Arthur in their white shawls, and the girl standing woodenly in the center of the synagogue. Alper and Zatorsky greet him with hellos, at which he nods back. The policeman. They've asked me to make a tent for the shriving. The rabbi, frowning as he darts into his office. Shriving? He opens his desk to get out his own large white shawl, unbuttoning his coat as he does. He notes Alper, who has followed him to the doorway. What is the policeman doing here? Alper. We needed a tent. In the synagogue, the policeman speaks amiably to Zatorsky. The policeman. This is the girl, isn't it? Zatorsky nods his head bleakly. What's really going on here? In the rabbi's office, the rabbi sweeps his large shawl over his shoulders. Alper. We have said Al Hayy and a prayer of atonement, and we are waiting now just for you. The rabbi frowns in troubled thought, slips his skull cap on as he slips his fedora off. In the synagogue, Zatorsky shuffles the schlüssel. Zatorsky, indicating the policeman with his head, he mutters, He knows. Schlüssel. Of course. Did Alper expect to get away with such a collegiate prank? In the rabbi's office, the rabbi finishes a rapid, silent prayer, standing with his eyes closed. He looks up at Alper now. The rabbi. I would rather not take any active role in this exorcism. I am not quite sure of my rabbinical position, but it would please me a great deal to believe once again in a God of Dybbuk's. He walks quickly past Alper out into the synagogue. Alper follows. Well, we are 10. A silence falls upon the gathered men. Foreman. May God look upon us with the eye of mercy and understanding, and may he forgive us if we sin in our earnestness. The others. Amen. The Kabbalist. Sexton, light the candles. The sexton lights each man's candle. The Kabbalist advances slowly to the girl, who stands slackly, her body making small, occasional jerking movements, apparently in a schizophrenic state. The Kabbalist slowly draws a line before the girl with the flat of his toe. He speaks quietly. The Kabbalist. Dybbuk, I draw this line beyond which you may not come. You may not do harm to anyone in this room. The old men shift nervously in their various positions around the synagogue. The Kabbalist turns to the sexton. The Kabbalist. Open the ark. The sexton moves quietly up to the altar and opens the brown sliding doors of the ark, exposing the several scrolls within, standing in their handsome velvet coverings. The Kabbalist moves slowly back to his original position. He says quietly, the Kabbalist, Dybbuk, you are in the presence of God and his holy scrolls. The girl gasps. I plead with you, one last time, to leave the body of this girl. There is no answer. Then I will invoke the curse of excommunication upon your pitiable soul. Sexton, blow tekiah. The sexton raises the ram's horn to his lips, and the eerie, frightening tones shrill out into the hushed air. The Kabbalist. Sexton, blow shebarim. Again, the sexton raises the ram's horn and blows a variation of the first hollow tones. The Kabbalist. Sexton, blow teruah. A third time, the sexton blows a variation of the original tones. The Kabbalist. Sexton, blow the great tekiah. And upon the sound of these tones, Dybbuk, you will be wrenched from the girl's body, and there will be cast upon you the final anathema of excommunication from all the world of the living, and from all the world of the dead. Sexton, Blow the great Tekia. For the fourth time, the sexton raises the ram's horn to his lips and blows a quick succession of loud blasts. A silence falls heavily on the gathered men, and the notes fading into the air. Nothing happens. The girl remains as she was, standing slackly, her hands making involuntary little movements. Foreman's head sinks slowly on his chest, and an expression of deep pain covers his face. The Kabbalist stares steadily at the girl. Suddenly, Arthur begins to moan softly. And then, with swift violence, a horrible scream tears out of his throat. He staggers one brief step forward. At the peak of his scream, he falls heavily down on the floor of the synagogue in a complete faint. The echoes of his scream tingle momentarily in the high corners of the air in the synagogue. The others stand petrified for a moment, staring at his slack body on the floor. Alper. My God. I think what has happened is that we have exercised the wrong Dybbuk. The policeman starts toward Arthur's limp body. The policeman. All right, don't crowd around, let him breathe. The Kabbalist. He will be all right in a moment. Zatorsky. If I didn't see this with my own eyes, I wouldn't believe it. The rabbi. Hirschman. Will he be all right? The Kabbalist. Yes. Schlissel. With simple devoutness. Praise be to the Lord, for his compassion is everywhere. Harris sinks down onto a chair, exhausted and terrified by the whole experience. The rabbi moves slowly down and stares at Arthur as Schlissel, Zatorsky, and Alper help him to a chair. Alper. How are you, my dear fellow? Arthur, still in a state of shock. I don't know. The sexton, coming forward with some wine. Would you like a sip of wine? Arthur taking the goblet. Yes, thank you very much. Turning to look at the girl. How is she? Her schizophrenic state is quite obvious. Arthur turns back, his face furrowed and his eyes closed now in a mask of pain. Schlissel. Was it a painful experience, my friend? Arthur. I don't know. I feel beyond pain. Indeed, his hands are visibly trembling as if from cold. His face is rigid and mask-like. Words become more difficult to say. I feel as if I have been reduced to the moment of birth, as if the universe has become one hunger. He seems to be almost on the verge of collapse. Alper. A hunger for what? Arthur, whispering. I don't know. The Kabbalist. For life. At these words, Arthur sinks back into his chair, exhausted. Arthur. Yes. For life. I want to live. He opens his eyes and begins to pray quietly. God of my fathers, you have exorcised all truth as I knew it out of me. You have taken away my reason and definition. Give me then a desire to wake in the morning, a passion for the things of life, a pleasure in work, a purpose to sorrow. He slowly stands for a reason unknown even to himself, and turns to regard the slouched figure of the girl. Give me all of these things in one. Give me the ability to love. In a hush of the scene, he moves slowly to the girl and stands before her crouched, slack figure. Dybbuk, hear me. I will cherish this girl and give her a home. I will tend to her needs and hold her in my arms when she screams out with your voice. Her soul is mine now. Her soul, her charm, her beauty, even you, her insanity, are mine. If God will not exorcise you, Dybbuk, I will. To the girl. Evelyn, I will get your coat. We have a lot of things to do this afternoon. He turns to the others. It is not a simple matter to get somebody released from an institution in New York. He starts briskly across to the rabbi's office and pauses at the door. Officer, why don't you just call in and say you have located the girl and she is being brought to her father? To Mr. Foreman, you'd better come along with us. Would somebody get my coat? We will need her father's approval. We shall have to stop off at my office and have my secretary draw some papers. Mr. Foreman has hurriedly gotten the girl's coat, Arthur's coat, and his own. In this rather enchanted state, these three drift to the exit door. The policeman. Rabbi, is this all right? The rabbi. Yes, quite all right. Arthur, pausing at the door, bemused, enchanted. Oh, thank you all. Goodbye. All. Goodbye. Zatorsky. Go in good health. Alper. Come back and make a tent for us sometime. Arthur smiles and herds the girl and Foreman out of the synagogue. The door closes behind them. Schlissel, sitting with a deep sigh. Well, what is one to say? An hour ago he didn't believe in God. Now he's exercising Dybbuk's. Alper, pulling up a chair. He still doesn't believe in God. He simply wants to love. Zatorsky joins the other two. And when you stop and think about it, gentlemen, is there any difference? Let us make a supposition. As the curtain falls, life as it was slowly returns to the synagogue. The three old men engage in disputation. The Kabbalist returns to his isolated studies. The rabbi moves off into his office. The sexton finds a chore for himself, and the policeman begins to button his coat. The curtain falls. All right. Sorry about the sneeze. Couldn't hold off for the last passage. So, okay. For a Gentile like myself, I found this play quite humorous. So we're going back and forth between theism and atheism, between life and no life, between sane and insane, and it's all both, neither, and everything and nothing. How to make sense of the senseless. You can't until you can, and you don't until you do, and then you don't, and you can't. I am... Paddy is really pulling me in. I'm really loving him. I'm not going to go into great detail about this because I'm still reeling a little bit from it. He still doesn't believe in God. He simply wants to love. So, as I was finishing or coming to the climax of this third act, I had a feeling Arthur was going to be the one exorcised and not the girl. And he's not, quote unquote, exorcised. He's, I think he just has an epiphany. Let's see. Oh my goodness. Arthur begins to moan softly, and then with the swift violence, a horrible scream tears out of his throat. I mean, he phrases it as an exorcism, but, yes, for life. A hunger for what? For life. I want to live. Let's see. God of my fathers, you have exercised all truth as I knew it out of me. You have taken away my reason and definition. Give me, then, a desire to wake in the morning, a passion for the things of life, a pleasure in work, a purpose to sorrow. Give me all these things in one. Give me the ability to love. I think we are to believe that he does want to go with the girl. And the girl, of course, is I think 18. But and are we to believe that when she said she loved him, she did? Part of me thinks so. Let me see. I don't want to resort to reading the synopsis, but I'm curious as to what it says, and I don't even know if I can or not. Hang on. Let's see. The 10th Man is an American. Okay, The 10th Man is a 1959 American play adapted from the Dybbuk from S. Ansky. It had 623 performances over its year-and-a-half-long Broadway run. The play involves several elderly Jewish men from the Old Country, Russia, all members of a small synagogue in Mineola, Long Island. The play opens with the hapless sexton's daily quest to gather 10 males to constitute a minyan quorum required in Jewish tradition to conduct a religious service. This search has suddenly become critical as the granddaughter of one of the men has apparently become possessed by the spirit of a Dybbuk, an evil spirit. The grandfather leaves the girl sitting in the office of the temple's young rabbi who is progressive and not likely to believe in the existence of evil spirits. The rabbi who's an atheist? The men then desperately begin to search for the necessary 10th man so they can hold the prayer service and attempt to exorcise the malevolent spirit. A young, non-believing Jewish man wanders into the synagogue suffering a hangover from the night spent getting drunk. He sees the granddaughter sitting semi-conscious and is moved and begins to fall in love. The older men are glad to welcome him because they now have the necessary 10 males. The rabbi agrees to conduct the exorcism with the aid of an elderly robed man, a Kabbalist, who has been praying in the temple. In the New York Times, Arthur Cantor wrote that The 10th Man marked a great leap forward from the easy naturalism of the first Chayefsky theater work and displayed his gift for picturesque speech and his penchant for themes of mysticism. Easy naturalism. People always shit on naturalism, but which kills me. And it's not necessarily wrong, but I mean, and it's not a low-hanging fruit. But naturalism is what I gravitate towards. I'm so tired. The most. And maybe it is because I'm simple, but and maybe because it is so relatable, but I hate when people are so critical of it. Even though I do think people should push beyond the easy, sometimes there's sometimes some of the most hurt and painful and truthful stuff have come from naturalism. Alright, The 10th Man. 623 performances. So the Dybbuk. Let's check out the Dybbuk. Oh, Jesus. The Dybbuk, or Between Two Worlds. is a play by S. Ansky, authored between 1913 and 1916. It was originally written in Russian and later translated into Yiddish by Ansky himself. The Dybbuk had its world premiere in that language, performed by the Vilna troupe at Warsaw in 1920. A Hebrew version was prepared by Chaim Nahman Bialik and staged in Moscow at Habima Theater in 1922. The play, which depicts the possession of a young woman by the malicious spirit known as a Dybbuk in Jewish folklore of her dead beloved, became a canonical work of both Hebrew and Yiddish theater, being further translated and performed around the world. Okay. Let's see. Oh my. Is there any modern adaptations? Yeah. Canadian playwright Anton Piedegorsk opened at Soul Pepper Theater. Interesting. So, I'm guessing Paddy read this play and was intrigued enough by it to create his own interpretation of it, which is definitely interesting. Let's see. So this is a pretty popular play by S. Ansky. Was a Jewish author, playwright, researcher of Jewish folklore, polemicist, and cultural and political activist. Okay. Born in 1863 and died in 1920. Let's see. Literary career. The Dybbuk. All right. Well, I'm not sure what more to say about it. It's Chayefsky's version is very humorous, and it's was a little bit helpful for a Gentile like myself, vanilla paste person like myself to interpret. Kind of the silliness of it, the silliness in the exercise of the exorcism, but not the fruitlessness of somebody coming to light in their life about making the necessary moves to move in their life. If you need some kind of made up something to make change, as long as it's not puppeteered by whatever it is that's being the impetus to making you change, ultimately that's a good thing. That's probably why a lot of people believe in what they believe. Arthur and Evelyn. Paddy really likes the name Evelyn. Okay, I'm not providing any weight here. Because I'm not sure what to say. It was an interesting play. There was humor. There was lyricism. I could picture him sitting down and writing this, amusing himself. I'm touched by I like the character of the girl, and I like the character of Arthur the most, I think. I don't have much to say beyond that. I hope people listen to this, they enjoy it. This is for entertainment purposes mostly. And if anybody has anything to say, feel free to comment below. All right, thanks for listening to this loose reading of The Tenth Man by Paddy Chayefsky, based on The Dybbuk by S. Ansky. Thanks a lot. Love you.